I love indie games, and every few years I like to share some lesser known ones that I really enjoyed in the hopes that you all check them out and enjoy them too. So I'm doing it again. Now every time I make one of these, I get a bunch of comments saying that I didn't pick obscure enough games, and yeah, that's probably fair. The last few have had some sort of popular ones on it. This time though, I'm only going to be talking about titles that have 1,000 or fewer reviews on Steam, and one of them isn't even on Steam, so take that. I know the number of Steam reviews something has isn't the best metric for this sort of thing, as it doesn't perfectly reflect sales or account for major releases on other platforms, but it is better than nothing. I also cross-checked each game on Backlog to make sure none of them are wildly popular outside of Steam. The point is, I tried. And you know what? I think there is a good bet that you haven't played or even heard of most of these games, unless you have, which is out of my control. So with that, let's talk about some indie games you haven't played. Probably. The first one I want to talk about, and frankly it is the reason I decided to make another video like this, is Burgeist. If I'm being honest, it is kind of a hard game to describe. Not because it doesn't fit into a genre, but because when I say it's an open world real-time strategy tower defense game, I worry that your ears are gonna shut off, but I promise you this game is awesome. The core premise is that you are trying to build a tower that reaches the heavens in order to save your wife, but whenever you start building one, monsters come to try to tear it down. The gameplay loop pretty much becomes partially building towers around the world to get experience and unlock new abilities so that you can more effectively defend the towers and eventually get one as high as you need to. Of course, you aren't doing this entirely alone. You also have the help of a Burgeist, which is a big monster with a slab of stone on its back that you can place cannons and other things on. The effectiveness of many abilities and the Burgeist are often influenced by height or distance, so whenever you're defending a tower, you really have to understand the general area so you can place yourself and the Burgeist in the most optimal spots. The slate of abilities the game offers are great. Some are damage focused, others are movement focused, a couple are a combination of both, and I found myself regularly using everything in my kit to efficiently move around the battlefield so I could get proper leverage. In case it wasn't clear from this description of the gameplay or the footage itself, this game is really weird, but all of its systems somehow tie together nicely, and it does a great job of making the moment-to-moment gameplay, both when in combat and out of it, feel engaging in one way or another. The world itself is mysterious and a lot of fun to try to make sense of. I loved exploring every inch of it and using my wide range of abilities to try to get places that seemed impossible to reach in the hopes that there may be a secret there, and I was almost always pleasantly surprised by what I found. While the story and characters are a bit off kilter, both are wildly intriguing, and I found myself wanting to engage with every side quest not just for the rewards, but also to learn a little bit more about the world and those within it. Burgeist is the kind of indie game I wish we had more of. It is specific and singular in its vision and feels so incredibly fresh. Girion Studio is also largely a one-person team, which given the scale of this game is wild. Above all though, it's fun to play, and I think a lot of you would like it. So if any of this sounds interesting, spend the $12 to get it. When I started working on this list, I assumed Burgeist would be the weirdest game on it, but then I came across Basilisk 2000, and it makes Burgeist seem tame by comparison. Developed by Kira, who you may recognize as the developer of Lunacid, Basilisk 2000 is presented almost like a found footage game. According to the store page, a fan came across the files for the unreleased sequel to the unreleased SNES game Basilisk, and they have created a tool so that you can view the various levels of it to see the game that could have been. If you've played Her Story or really any Sam Barlow game, its framing device feels similar to those. Through using the game engine tool, you'll act as a sort of detective to learn both about the game and the story of why it never came out, both of which are fascinating to uncover. The only way to load a new area is by knowing its name, and discovering these names sometimes comes down to just paying attention to context clues in the levels you do have access to, but other times it will require using every potential trick at your disposal to get more information. I don't want to go into any more detail than that, as this very much falls into the category of games where the less you know, the better. I will say, compared to things like Her Story, this is definitely more about the exploration than the puzzle solving. That's not to say there is nothing to solve, there are many things to solve, but the moment-to-moment fun of the game will come less from aha moments and more from piecing together the story through the things you discover in each level. It's also worth noting that it can be pretty obscure. There are clear connections to be made, but it is fairly esoteric with how it makes many of them, which I imagine for some of you will be exactly your kind of thing, and for others will be a bit harder to latch onto. Ultimately, what I love about it is that it uses a very cool framing device to tell a story in a way that only a video game can. It's weird and creepy and really unique. For those of you who love liminal spaces, this should be right up your alley. You can get it for $2 on itch.io, and you can also play its predecessor Basilisk for free, which I'd say is a great companion game if you find yourself enjoying Basilisk 2000. This is one of those experiences that feels so rare to come across, and it plays with the medium in such an interesting way that I would say it's worth checking it out for that alone. Moving into the world of far more conventional games, the next one I want to talk about is Prodigal. If it wasn't obvious by simply looking at it for a few seconds, Prodigal draws heavy inspiration from The Legend of Zelda, specifically the more classic 2D games. Frankly, while I like the direction Nintendo has taken the series, I do often find myself wishing they do more in the 2D space, and while Echoes of Wisdom scratched a bit of that itch, it still wasn't exactly the kind of structure I was hoping for, and that is why I am very thankful Colorgrave exists and that they decided to build on the Zelda formula in their own way. It has good dungeons, some cool bosses, unique items, and a lot of charm. One thing that I think makes it stand out is that it has a strong focus not just on being the hero of the village, but also on creating relationships with the people in it, of changing your reputation from someone who abandoned the town to someone who is an integral part of it. This takes the form of friendships you can build as well as romantic relationships, which I never thought I'd want in a game like this, but it works well. I don't know if it feels this way with all the characters, but at least with the one I ended up with, the relationship added a new layer to the wider story that I think benefited the narrative in a handful of ways. While the core of the game is solid in its own right, I think what really makes Prodigal shine is how much optional stuff there is to do that feels worthwhile, especially in the post-game. Like, I spent more time playing after I rolled credits than I did before, and there aren't a ton of games that I find myself doing that with. By and large, Prodigal is a fresh take on a classic formula that does a lot to get you to care about the place you're saving, and I found this super refreshing, as so many games kind of expect you to want to save a place because that's what heroes do and don't put in the work to establish reasons beyond that. There's lots and lots to love here, and I think it will be a great time for anyone who misses the days of playing stuff on their Game Boy Color. The next title I had originally planned to talk about actually passed 1,000 Steam reviews at some point between me buying it and making this video, so in order to skirt around my arbitrary rule that no one is actually going to hold me to, the game I'm going to recommend is Sheepo, a 2D Metroidvania with smooth movement and a good sense of humor developed by Kyle Thompson. And now that I think of it, everything in this game really set the groundwork for Kyle Thompson's follow-up game, Islets. Islets sets you in a world that has been fractured into multiple floating islands, and you are tasked with bringing them all back together. Like most Metroidvanias, you'll unlock new abilities that recontextualize the places you've been and unlock new paths forward. But what makes it stand out a bit from its contemporaries is that as you bring the pieces of the island back together, that also opens up new paths and secrets. So you go from exploring each island in its separated state to exploring it in its connected one, and it's just a neat progression system that keeps the world from getting stale. While its mechanics aren't all that deep, everything from its combat to its movement to its level design are executed well, making it a super polished experience. I played on hard, which I found to be about the right level of challenge I'd want from a Metroidvania like this. Given its light tone, I was hoping for something that'd keep me on my toes but not push me in the same way that some other titles in the genre tend to, and it did not disappoint. Yeah, Islets is great. Anyway, now that I've Trojan horsed Islets into this video, I do want to say that Sheepo is also a good time, and despite how it may seem, it isn't just Islets but less. It focuses a bit more on the platforming and puzzle side of things, as there isn't any real combat. Instead, the few fights you do get into are about avoiding attacks and getting bosses to hurt themselves. It's cool stuff. Kyle Thompson makes really slick games that I think a lot of you would enjoy, so I'd say start with Islets and then check out the rest of his catalog from there. While we're in the Metroidvania section of this video, let's talk about Xanthium Zero. Xanthium Zero is about as Metroidy as a Metroidvania can get. Clearly, the developer Mathen Games has a lot of love for the Metroid series, and based on this game, especially the older titles. However, even with its retro aesthetic and old school sensibilities, it does still do a lot to feel pretty modern. The movement is super responsive, the enemies, especially the bosses, are fairly complex, and there are a handful of intriguing systems systems to play around with, the coolest being how your gun works. Essentially, your blaster has various components to it, and as you collect different parts, you can customize it to bring about different effects. It can change the spread of your shots or the distance they travel, and mixing and matching these can lead to some pretty powerful combos, and I had a lot of fun testing stuff out to find what worked best for me. What's cool is while you probably will settle on a single combination at some point, you'll still find yourself switching things up on occasion for various reasons, whether it be to solve a puzzle or take on a specific enemy. I liked that I never felt like here is the single best thing for every situation, so I'll always stick with this. It makes it so you actually end up using a lot of the stuff you pick up, which is great. With all the different components and parts, there are thousands of forms your blaster can take. Obviously, some will feel pretty close to others, but it's still a rad system that provides a ton of versatility. I imagine there are other games that have done something similar to this, but as I haven't really played anything that executes customization in this exact way, I found it to be pretty novel. Along with the neat weapon customization system, the rest of the game is really tightly designed. The pacing is solid, the level design is on point, and the various upgrades you get find use in both platforming and combat, which I think is great. Its story is also pretty fun. The whole idea is that you're on a planet where time is unstable, and while this doesn't get used with the gameplay all that much, aside from it being how your character canonically comes back from the dead, I did find it intriguing enough to be invested. All in all, it's a sweet little game with a few aspects that make it worth playing more than once, and it's like $5, which, given this game's general quality, is a steal. After that, we've got Snow Ultimate Freeriding. If I'm being honest, Snow is not the type of game I normally recommend in these kinds of videos, or frankly, just in general. I tend to gravitate towards stuff that is more structured. I like games that have clear progression, and maybe most importantly, an ending. But Snow doesn't have either. Not really, at least. There are a handful of modes, each of which asks you to engage with the core mechanics in slightly different ways, whether it be an infinite run where you go until you crash, seeing how far you can get and how many points you can rack up, or score attack, where you have a set distance to get as high of a score as possible. However, as it is an arcade title, there is no in-game goal you're supposed to try to achieve. It's all self-directed. Sure, you can always look to top the leaderboard, but for me at least, that's never gonna happen. I'm not good enough. These kinds of games rarely work for me, as I tend to be an extrinsically motivated kind of player, yet I keep finding myself coming back to this one. That largely comes down to the fact that it nails the exhilarating feeling of careening down a mountain. Its mechanics are simple, but there is enough depth there to have something that actually takes skill to master, and while this certainly isn't a game I find myself playing for hours at a time, it is one I like to jump into when I have just 10 or 15 minutes before I have to do something else. Whether I'm trying to top my personal high score or coast down the mountain in Zen mode to see how far I can get, it is a nice way to spend a bit of time. The game is probably best played in third person, but it does have a few different perspective options, and I actually really like playing in first person. The naturalistic soundscape and beautiful vistas mixed with the smooth movement brings a sort of authenticity to that perspective, and makes darting between trees and pulling off tricks feel so exciting. The developers, Studio Gauntlet, get what makes skiing and snowboarding feel so special, and they've translated it excellently to this medium. There is a demo for it, although I haven't played it, so I don't know how much there is to it, but I'd assume there's enough there for you to get a good idea of what it's like. So I'd say if the game seems interesting to you at all, at the very least, give that a look. Sticking with games focused on nature, next up is a Highland Song. Set in the Scottish Highlands, the game revolves around the main character Moira running away from home after receiving a letter from her uncle urging her to come visit him within a week so she can witness something truly special. So your goal becomes navigating the Highlands as efficiently as possible to hopefully reach him in time. I know there are a lot of people who have an aversion to any sort of time limit in games, but I think it works well here for a few reasons. One is that it creates stakes for every choice you make. Whether it be where or when you choose to rest or what path you follow, you'll always be weighing whether or not any given action or encounter is worth the risk, leading to some interesting decision making. Also, there is no real fail state. Reaching Moira's uncle is possible and satisfying even if you don't make it in time, although making it in time obviously is more satisfying. The biggest thing though is that the game is so densely packed with different paths and encounters that you can play through it multiple times and experience the Highlands in entirely new ways each time. It is designed to be replayed, so if you don't reach the goal on your first try, that's okay. There's more stuff than you could ever discover in a single playthrough, so you won't have to just replay the same thing over again. And honestly, it is worth seeing what else is out there. The various locations all have rich histories to them, and it is a joy to uncover the secrets of the Highlands, both in terms of navigation and lore. The general presentation is also incredible. The art style, the music, the narration, the in-game documents, it all just adds so much to the experience and helps the world feel realized in a way that many games struggle to achieve. In turn, this made it so easy for me to care about the Highlands as if it was an actual place. And of course it is, but I mean specifically this video game version of the Highlands. It is a journey worth having and really is unlike any other platformer I've played before. Inkle has been around the indie scene for a while now, and they've clearly taken the lessons they've learned from previous projects to create something pretty special here. Then we've got Signs of the Sojourner, a deck builder developed by Echo Dog Games. When I think of titles that have immaculate vibes, this one always comes to mind. It has a stellar soundtrack and cozy artwork, and it uses its gameplay in a way that complements the story being told. Instead of its deck building being an avenue to battle others like it so often is in games, here it is used to have conversations with them. These conversations largely consist of trying to match symbols with whoever you're talking with. Each symbol represents a different approach to communication, like being empathetic or logical or creative or dog. Every character you encounter will largely be aligned with one or two specific communication styles, and as you meet more people and have interactions with them, you get to add one of their cards to your deck. Generally speaking, the various characters tend to communicate better with those who match their communication style, so by adding cards that correspond with different styles, you have more flexibility in who you can talk to. However, you do have a card limit, so adding one means tossing another. The main challenge then becomes figuring out how to best balance your deck so you can have positive interactions with as many people as possible while not spreading yourself too thin so that you relate to no one. Having negative conversations doesn't lead to a fail state, but it does influence the things you are able to accomplish in the story. And I think the game does some clever things with that dynamic. Outside of conversations, you also have to actually choose what places you want to go, and this adds an additional interesting layer of complexity as everything operates on a schedule, so you have to be cognizant of when certain things are happening and how far away you are from them in order to maximize the amount of things you can do. At the end of the day, it is a well-written narrative game with an interesting core mechanic that keeps it engaging for its entire runtime, and given its structure, it also has a fair amount of replay potential for those who look for that sort of thing. I have seen it described as a roguelite before, and while it has some things in common with them, I'd say do not expect it to scratch the same kind of itch. The star here is the narrative, so check it out with that in mind. Anyway, that's it. Hopefully at least one of these games is both new to you and also of interest. Now that I'm done covering a bunch of indie games you probably haven't played, I want to spend a bit of time talking about something related to one that you probably have. That being this video's sponsor, Lost in Cult's latest DesignWorks book on Animalwell. As I've talked about in the past, Lost in Cult is the best in the business when it comes to publishing books on the development process of games. From their books on Outer Wilds to Sable to Citizen Sleeper, they continually make incredible books that celebrate the creation of beloved titles, and their book on Animalwell is shaping up to be another stellar entry. Made in collaboration with the game's developer Billy Basso, as well as Dan Edelman, who headed up the business and marketing side of things, and of course the heads of Big Mo, Donkey, and Leah, it covers the 7-year development of the game. Along with an in-depth documentation of the process, it also has never before seen prototypes, secrets, and artwork that will allow you to appreciate it in all sorts of new ways. And as always, Lost in Cult has created a deluxe edition that is even cooler and available during their pre-order campaign, which is going on from now until July 1st. Along with getting a hardcover version of the book, you'll also get 3 beautiful art prints, 4 badges, a bookmark, and an infinite looping cassette filled with the ambient sounds of Animalwell's world, which frankly is both the weirdest thing they could have come up with, but also somehow perfectly fitting, and probably the thing I'm most excited about. Separate from the book, you can also pick up the vinyl soundtrack for the game if you're into collecting that sort of thing. If any of this sounds interesting to you, you can get 5% off by using code RASPUTANAW at lostincult.co.uk, and that applies for anything in their store, whether it be this book or a different one that catches your eye. Lost in Cult does really great work, and it is just awesome to have indie games be celebrated and documented in this way. So if you're a fan of Animalwell, definitely give this book a look. Thanks to Lost and Cult for sponsoring this video. For all of you still here, I appreciate you. I'd like to thank my patrons for making this channel possible. Life is weird and you offer a stability I wouldn't have otherwise, so it means a lot. With that, I hope you have a great day and or night, and I will see you in the next one.